Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, Season 6 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Tim Hortons. They satisfy your craving for cozy winter comfort with a bit of a fun twist here. It's the new hot and cold white chocolate pistachio-flavored beverages. They've all arrived at Tim's. Delicious as always. All new to the menu, including the white chocolate pistachio latte, white chocolate pistachio iced latte, white chocolate pistachio iced cap, and white chocolate pistachio hot chocolate. A delicious way to enjoy at any point of your day and a wonderful way to stay cozy, Ray. And it looks like you're cozy. Yep. You're on the road, aren't you, my friend?
I am. I'm in Vegas. Dallas and Vegas tonight. And always kind of fun to come to Vegas. Had a rather poor round at the table last night. And just helping contribute to the local economy.
Was the dealer giving you any tips? Because I know that you're big on that. Any sort of helpful hints, Ray, is all on board.
We had 3 dealers last night. One of them, I must have had uncomfortable shoes, really grumpy. They're just no fun. Move along. Go away. These other 2 ladies were fabulous. And they were so funny. They were veterans. I mean, they'd been there before, right? They'd been there for a few decades. And oh my God, they were hilarious. It made the night, actually. Yeah, they were.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, when you're having fun with hopefully the people that you're there, because there's a fair level of chirping, unless you're not an amateur, but I'm not a very experienced blackjack player. So I need guys like you. Pierre LeBrun is pretty good. So because you're helpful and you'll give me, just be careful with that. But then you've got a guy 2-3 chairs away or at the end of the table who does something stupid. And you're like, oh, okay, what are we doing here? So I've experienced all of that with you.
We were sitting there and then these 2 younger guys came up and the one guy beside me took out his wallet. And it was like a wallet you had in high school. Like it
like folded George open. Costanza?
No, but you remember the ones that fold open? Not like the ones that you just had. Yeah. So he folded it open and I was with Steve Levy and we looked at each other. We're like, oh boy. And so he took out his money. The dealer has a 10. No, the dealer has a 6. He gets 14. And he's going to take a hit, and we're like, woo, 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 woo. Just kind of, right away we jump up and
pump the brakes here, buddy. Yeah.
And we're like, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm trying to get as close to 21 as I can. And Levy goes, yeah, but not against the 6. And he's like, this is the first hand I've ever played in Vegas. We're like, okay, this is going to be the last couple hands we play at this table. The kid, he got wiped out in about 7 minutes, and we're like,
sure.
Like the only chance you have is that you sort of play along the book, but if you're guessing along, man, that's going to be short. And we're like, it was like a heavyweight fight where one guy had a hand but tied behind his back. It was quick. that was quick.
Yeah, well, talking about heavyweights, man. Talk about the Carolina Hurricanes here in the Tim Hortons headlines acquiring the heavyweight in Mikko Rantanen. And personally, a rare Friday live into SportsCenter for me. 10:30 Eastern time Friday night. And frankly, in response to what I can only describe as, if not borderline shocking, certainly surprising, the significance of this trade. There had been lots of talk of connecting Vancouver and what the Carolina Hurricanes might do, what direction they're going to go, knowing that Eric Telsky, Tom Dundon wanted to add. Nobody had Mikko Rantanen's name out there in trade at this point. It's still way too early. We know he's a pending unrestricted free agent. So your first reaction when you heard that Mikko Rantanen was going from Colorado to Carolina?
Well, the fact that it was Carolina was what was surprising to me, because I just hadn't in my head put those 2 together. I mean, it makes total sense. Carolina, for the last how long, half decade, has been one of the best teams in the East, and they bump their head on the ceiling because they don't score in the playoffs. Like they just can't quite get over the hump. They don't They dominate a game, they outshoot a team 37-15 and lose 2-1. Happens
Yeah.
all the time to them. That's where the road ends for them. And this is clearly an attempt to get one more goal in a big game, right? And Rantanen clearly can do it. What I found a little bit curious in that it's him, I think they're short a centerman. And Rantanen, yes, he can play center, but he's better on the wing. In my opinion, I love the guy.
Yeah.
I think he's awesome player. I just think he's better on the wing. But
Yeah.
they really haven't addressed, in my mind, what is a weakness for them. Now, maybe this does it in a little bit different way, because I think he's a different player than Jake Gensel, who they acquired last year. Like, Gensel's more of a complementary finisher, and Rantanen, because of his size, he's a mail carrier. Man, like he can really change the thing. So I was stunned by the trade. I mean, in season, these deals just don't happen very often,
Not
right?
to this magnitude. No. And look, Marty Necas, who you've spoken often of, based on his quality of play, deserves some credit. And the takeaway of Necas leaving Carolina to go to Colorado, Ray, was he learned a lot from Rod Brind'Amour. But who's kidding who? Brind'Amour demands a system and a style of play that Rantanen is going to fit perfectly in. And Necas wants to be more free-flowing, fun hockey, as he might describe. And he'll get a lot of that in Colorado. So it's not like Colorado got nothing in return here. I mean, Marty Necas is a hell of a hockey player, and Jack Drury is pretty solid.
Necas is dynamic, right? Like, I know that term gets thrown around a lot. Watch him carry the puck. He's a dynamic transporter of the puck. Drury's a third line guy who will kill penalties, give them a degree of hardness that they are looking for. The problem, I guess, from Colorado's standpoint, is that you can never bat 500 on this trade. Like you just can't. You're going to lose the trade almost every time. And then, I mean, it was, it had been talked about quite significantly that Rantanen would be looking for at least an approach to Draisaitl's contract.
Yeah, around like 14 million. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And then when he came out and said that he would have taken a significant haircut to stay, like something got missed in the translation there, right? Like, because if he would have taken the haircut, like, how does he end up in Carolina?
Yeah,
like that's the part I couldn't figure out.
There had to be a breakdown in communication. Look, I mean, I was covering this story extensively on Friday night, and that was some of the messaging that I got back. So the surprise would come in the fact that Chris McFarland and the Colorado Avalanche pulled the trigger as quickly as they did. And I guess we can appreciate why they would, right? There is a fear factor when it comes into a piece like that getting injured at any point in the near future. All of a sudden it's long-term and you've got nothing. And this guy walks into free agency, you get zero in return. Otherwise, if you're not motivated by that, then you have to look at the dollars. And okay, you've got McKinnon at 12.6. Cale Makar is up, I guess after next season, after the 25-26 season. So this could be a team budget thing too, right? Like, who cares what the salary cap is? It could be $100 million, but even though they're one of the richest owners in sport, maybe they're a budget team and they don't want to pay three players, $13+ million each. Could have come down to that.
Okay. Yes, except if you're paying to the cap, which they do, or, within a few dollars of the cap, you could look at it like, what difference does it make if you pay 3 guys or 5 guys? Right? Like, because you're still going to use that money.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And so the way they put the cap together for each team is going to differ. It just seems really difficult that to to get to a point where you can't keep a guy like Rantanen. It's really difficult for the manager to swallow. And then you've got to make a trade. Like, there's no way they can think they got equal value.
No.
They didn't. But that's not necessarily their fault. They did the best they could with the circumstance they had. And don't give me that, you could have let him walk, and then you've got $11 million in cap space to use, and that cap space is a weapon. And I get all that.
Yeah.
But that just won't work, in my opinion, with a player like Rantanen. Like,
no.
It would take enormous support from the owner to let him walk. And also, your job's sitting on the line. Like, you could get to July 1st and get a bucket of feathers, and then what? Right? You turn around to the owner and say, "Okay, we're going to build for the future." And you saw Nate McKinnon's interview after the trade, and
sour.
all sour, and they rebounded nicely and won in New York. But the sourness isn't going to go away. And if you let Rantanen go and get nothing, that's going to be a tough one in September.
Right. And that it's priority one for Tom Dundon to not allow that to happen. I mean, you don't acquire a piece like Mikko Rantanen and not understand what it's going to take to extend him. What's out of your control is whether or not Mikko Rantanen wants to stay long-term in Carolina, and time will tell, right? We know he's buddies with Sebastian Aho, and there are pieces there that he's very familiar with. And he might fall in love with Carolina, like so many players have and continue to live in that area. So that's best case scenario. But let's have some fun and play the what-if game. What if he decides that he still wants to see what the open market presents? No different than Darren Ferris would tell you this of his blue chip client, and that's Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs. You imagine those two top coveted wingers hitting the market on July 1. And then for me to play devil's advocate, I know Toronto wants to sign Marner. They're not afraid to spend the money, 13 plus million. Not whatever. There's a cap. Of course there is. You're Brad Treliving, and you're closing in on July 1, and you still don't have a direct answer from Marner. And all of a sudden you believe that Rantanen is hitting the open market. You go, boom, hold on a sec. That 13 plus schmil, it's now going over here. Let's get in that game. What would you do?
Well, you brought up a scenario that I hadn't really thought of, and that is that Chris McFarland was sitting in Colorado with Mikko Rantanen, and he's worried about what if he gets hurt. That scenario you brought up earlier. And so eventually they got to make that move. They whether you like it or not, the fear to them obviously was the longer they wait, something bad could happen, and they don't even get in the ballpark of the equivalent return that they got.
Yeah.
When you said you get close to July 1st, this is a scenario, the Darren Dreger scenario, and I want to make that clear. This is Darren Dreger. Is you say that he hasn't got a direct answer from the Marner camp. Then would you pivot and look at Rantanen? The July 1st deadline to me is not the deadline. It is, if you're Brad Treliving, it's in front of that. I need an answer by whatever the date is. What else are you going to find out about the Leafs? What else are you going to find out about the city of Toronto? You live there. You're from there. You're either going to stay or you're not. Here's the offer we can go to. You get right down to the last week. You've got to know that if you cannot get the answer that you want from the Marner camp, then yes, you do have to pivot. Like, I don't think you have a choice. You've got a replacement that's sitting there that's 28 years old. If you could get him to sign. Here's the other thing. Just like you said, you don't know whether Rantanen would want to stay in Carolina. Who's to say he wants to come to Toronto? Maybe he doesn't.
Right.
Maybe he thinks that's the worst place to come.
Absolutely. It's fair.
Right? And so now the game of who wants what with the Marner camp and the Leafs themselves, I think this maybe moves this into the passing lane a little bit, right? Like
Mm.
now things have to be thought about in a different way because of the Rantanen trade. I think anyway.
Right. Okay. And look, I normally and I'm trying to think of a player who comes close to this stature, Mikko Rantanen, and we'd have to think back a little bit. But I'm talking about in-season deals here, where normally managers who don't land that player didn't know that that player was potentially a player pissed, right? They're like, well, yeah, I know it's hard to make in-season trades, but God, why didn't you call me? I could have given you a better deal, but I
Well,
haven't heard
the
that,
one
to
I
be
think of
honest. Yeah.
the one I think of right away is Joe Thornton, right? Where
That's going back a long time. Yeah.
yeah, but apparently San Jose was the only team that knew he was on the market,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, how did that happen,
Yeah.
right?
Michael Conn
So
took a lot of heat for that, as you
yeah,
recall.
that if we're yes, I do. If I can just bump this a little bit, please explain to me why the Blackhawks got involved to collect a third round pick when they
Yeah.
didn't know the deal
Right. That
that was
doesn't make
going
any
on.
sense.
It
Yeah.
makes no sense to me.
No.
None, zero. Oh, they saved a little bit of cap space, I get, or cap real money in
Yeah.
in.
Not much,
But
though. Yeah.
but that just I still and then I still don't get it. Even though Kyle Davidson came out and said that he didn't know the deal, the bigger deal. I'm like, I guess you got to stay in your lane, but that still thing, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fairness, there are also people who question, why trade Taylor Hall now? Like if there's virtually no market for Taylor Hall, and sad but true, I think we can envision that being the reality of the situation, right? Well, maybe it improves between now and March 7th. And if it doesn't, there's always a team that's going to take that player, for whatever. So the whole explanation coming out of Chicago, I'm with you. I wish I could explain it and make sense of it, but I can't, because it just didn't pass the sniff test even a little bit
Yeah.
in any of the directions you want to cover. All right, we've got to wrap up. We've got Gord Miller coming up here, who's going to talk all things international, and there's a reason for it. As we reported on yesterday, as the NHL and the NHLPA have said to the IIHF, we don't need you as a partner for the 2028 World Cup of Hockey. Obviously, there's politics involved in that. We'll get Gord to weigh in. But we can't leave this whole big trade without talking about the Vancouver Canucks. 5-2 win, by the way, last night over the St.
2 in a
Louis
row.
Blues. Yeah.
Don't break them up.
And and the motto there, and I'm not making fun of it, is we're going to fix it inch by inch. And that sounds daunting when you hear it that way at this point of the regular season. But in fairness, that's the messaging I'm getting from that team, and I appreciate it. I do, given everything that they've had to deal with and the turmoil that they've gone through. Somebody at Trust told me yesterday that 90% of Rick Tockett's time this year has been spent trying to focus and manage what's gone on between Miller and Pettersson, which it sounds ridiculous. But
it really does. Sense. When you say it like that,
it's absurd.
Absurd
at this level.
It really does. Yeah.
So we know that Vancouver and Carolina were talking, and now you can appreciate, even if Carolina was willing to offer somewhere similar a package, it wouldn't have been the same as they paid Colorado for Rantanen, because you're not getting the same proven player in return, obviously, right? And it was focused around Pettersson. It doesn't matter because the deal didn't happen. I don't give a rat's how close it came. As soon as Rantanen was officially in play involved, there went the Canucks out the side door. I mean, that was just the reality of the situation. So does it make sense to you, again, as it was kind of explained to me, that Vancouver knows that if they trade JT, it's going to hurt them. If they trade Elias Pettersson, it's going to hurt them. If they trade both, it's obviously going to hurt them. But the way things are right now is hurting them. So that trade could happen in an hour. Maybe it doesn't happen at all. That's
So
where the Canucks are.
I look at the Canucks every bit like I look at the New York Rangers this year. Um, the Chris Drury sent out that memo. You know,
Yeah.
everybody's up, including Kreider and Trouba. Like that just doesn't disappear. It's
Yeah.
just quieted down, and there'll be a deal for Kreider or there won't. Right? Like you
Yeah.
don't send that out and then just have it disappear out of people's minds.
No.
Now, they went into almost an identical tailspin of the Canucks. The people that were supposed to score never scored. The
Yeah.
goalie was just average, and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
And I think they won 3 games in December. It was something crazy, like very much what Vancouver did, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm just they were 4-15 in the last 19 games of 2024, and they made a couple of trades, and it seems like they've steadied their ship a bit.
Yep.
There's all this noise around Vancouver. The Pettersson to Carolina thing obviously was talked about. It's been reported everywhere, and it didn't happen. But you wouldn't just all of a sudden now everything's great because you won 2 games, right? So like the
No.
inch by inch comment I think is pretty accurate. Like
Yeah.
it could be something big. It might not be something big, but the problems that the on ice problems, the last 2 games look like they're not there anymore, and I don't
Yeah.
get how they just all of a sudden disappeared. Like if you know what's coming out of the door for the Canucks in the next game, you're in a minority, because each game it's been this season, up and down, inconsistency has been the norm, not
Right.
the rarity. So I don't know. It's been better to watch for a couple of games. I did the game Saturday against Washington. It was terrific. There's not been many nights like that, and
No.
it's it's clearly something they view that they have to dig in and fix. But it's not going to go away because they won 2 games.
TSN's Gord Miller is going to join us momentarily here, Ray. And among other things that we'll talk about internationally related, of course, we've got to talk about Alex Pietrangelo of the Vegas Golden Knights removing himself from the Team Canada roster with the Four Nations face-off coming up shortly as well. Those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons.
Tim's new white chocolate pistachio latte is here to mix up your day. Freshly ground espresso beans topped with Belgian white chocolate curls with a delicious pistachio flavor. Order the hot or iced white chocolate pistachio lattes on the Tim's app today.
It's time for Tim's.
All right, as advertised, there's TSN's Gord Miller joining us this week on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. And really want to introduce you, Gord, because, you're a semi-regular to the show, second time this season. Do I call you a double IHF Hall of Famer? Is that appropriate, or is it okay just to say TSN's Gord Miller?
Judging by the reaction from Ray, I think it's better if you just call me TSN's Gord Miller.
Jesus, why throw the air in the tires this early? Like, come on. Seriously.
Oh, come on. We got to have some chuckles here. It's the first time the three of us have been together. Now, Gord was kind enough to replace Ray, who decided to go on a golf boondoggle earlier in the year. So
yes, there was decisions to be made. And, sorry, golf took out.
Well, the reason we bring you in, obviously, Gord, is there's a lot going on internationally. And maybe those of us here in North America, mainstream media, don't spend enough attention on digging beneath the surface of some of these top international stories. But one that does touch hockey fans in North America is very recent this week. In fact, with Alex Pietrangelo of the Vegas Golden Knights removing himself from the roster of Team Canada with the upcoming Four Nations. Clearly, he's got something going on that requires further attention. But, what do you make of that? And automatically, the feedback from fans was, here we go. Like, are we going to see 2 more, 5 more, 10 more players that do this?
Well, I wonder, if the NHL might have to go to what they do for the All-Star game, whereas if you sit out the Four Nations, you have to miss games either before or after. I mean, look, are guys excited about the Four Nations? Yeah, somewhat. Are their teams excited about it? Yeah, somewhat. But for a team like Vegas that has Stanley Cup aspirations, I think they'd rather the players got a rest.
Sure.
I think there's some uneasiness on the part of some players about, look, the schedule's really compressed. I just did an Ottawa game the other day. They just finished like a 10-game stretch in 22 days or something. Like, it was crazy how much they've been playing. And so I think that there's also some unease on the part of the European federations, Sweden and Finland. This is for NHL players only. Okay, so Jani Hakanpää, who's with Toronto but has barely played this year, isn't playing right now, is on the Finnish roster. If he can't play, Henri Jokiharju's injured with Buffalo, Ville Heinola injured with Winnipeg. Now you're down to, Vakanainen from the Rangers or, other depth guys. They'd like to bring a guy from the Finnish league. They've got a defenseman from the Finnish league who's number 2 in that league in scoring, but it's only for NHL players. So they can't. The Swedes, look, Markstrom's not going to play.
No.
We don't have Elias Ullmark. He's iffy. They'd like to bring Jonas Enroth if they got to bring 2 goalies. Enroth's having a real good year in Sweden. He's got NHL experience. But again, it's for NHL players only. So these things have to be ironed out. And, we saw this with the World Cup in 2016. They wanted NHL players only. That's how you wound up with Team North America and Team Europe. And it looked gimmicky because it was.
Okay, Gord. So with the NHL only designation, it seems like everything with international hockey is a trade. Right? Like nothing ever seems direct. We'll do this if you do that. How do they get to this point that NHL players only? We know the Olympics are on the horizon. That's always, since 2014 has been a difficult thing with the NHL players. And there always seems to be rocks in the road with international hockey. Maybe explain a little bit of why that would be.
There's a lot of moving parts. So the IHF is the international governing body, but the NHL considers itself above the IHF. So it's about control and it's about money. So the NHL looks at the Olympics and sees all these millions and even billions of dollars being generated, and they're not getting any of it. They look at the IHF getting money. So the IOC pays each national Olympic committee a share of the Olympic proceeds and also pays the sports federations for running it. So World Athletics gets a cut from the Summer Olympics, and the IHF gets a cut from the Winter Olympics. The IHF's cut has been cut in half the last 2 Olympics because NHL players weren't there. So that's why the IHF wants NHL players in the Olympics so badly. The NHL looks at it and says, we get nothing out of this. And when you talk about the players, Ray, think back to the first Olympics with NHL players in '98 in Nagano. And the Czechs win the gold medal. Fabulous. Dominic Hasek, Jaromir Jagr, and 14 guys who didn't play in the NHL. The look on the NHL marketing people's faces, executives. I mean, who is Yuri Topita, and why does he have a gold medal? And so that push-pull, right, becomes a part of this calculus. And so the NHL wants to have the World Cup in 2028. In February. That's the IHF schedule has international breaks over the course of the season. There's 4 of them. And one of them's in February. So that won't work for them. Plus, it's right before the World Championship, which is the IHF's biggest annual moneymaker, which would impact that. Now, the NHL's argument back is, you're making all this money with our players. Like the World Championship, a lot of those guys are our players who are going there and filling your venues and selling your TV deals. So that's the push-pull of it. Can they work together? It sure doesn't sound like it right now. Like Darren, you reported yesterday, like it's basically go pound sand, right? Like they're just saying,
yeah, related to the World Cup, that's exactly the way it is. And what I would wonder is, and there is an open end to this for now, right? For now, the NHL, the Players Association, have told the IHF, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. We'll run it on our own, and we'll do all of that. But what sort of pressures can the IHF now apply back on the NHL and the Players Association? Because 28 isn't around the corner. There's still time to put a little bit of pressure.
Well, I mean, look, the Four Nations is being run. The Swedish and Finnish federations are cooperating with the NHL outside the IHF. This is an IHF-sanctioned tournament. What could the IHF do in 2028? I guess, in theory, they could suspend any federation that took part in a non-sanctioned international event in February.
Oh, boy.
We did do that. That's quite a bridge to cross. But here's my question for you guys. Okay, so you want to have a 2028 World Cup. Let's say you want to have not Team North America, not Team Europe again. So you want to have the Czechs. Okay, well, They don't have enough NHL players. There's only 5 Czech defensemen playing in the NHL right now. Like, the NHL and North American hockey fans are going to have to accept. And Ray, Greg, you've both been to the World Championship. Mm-hmm. We've been over there together a bunch of times. There are some really good players in hockey who aren't playing in the NHL.
Oh, yeah.
For various reasons. Reasons. So the NHL is not the only shop on the block. But the NHL wants to be. They don't like, the NHL does not like things it doesn't control. I mean
true.
Very
true.
One year, they scheduled all 7 Canadian teams to play on the day of the gold medal game of the World Junior Championship, which was in North America. Like, why would you do that?
Just an accident? As my mom would say, a coinky
those games all got clobbered in the ratings. Like, I mean, what are you doing? But so this is all about control and money. Yeah. And to be honest, NHL owners don't want to go to the Olympics.
Oh God, no!
They get nothing out of it.
Too much risk. Yeah.
Let's say, I don't know, Miro Heiskanen scores the golden goal for Finland in the gold medal game in Milan. The Dallas Stars can't even show that on their broadcast or on their video screen. Like, you don't have the video rights to show it.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is about money and control, and it has been for a very long time. And look, I'd love to see a World Cup with real teams, right? I'd like to see.
Oh, of course.
Let's say the Russians are back. Just say by 2028 the Russians are back. Canada, USA, Sweden, Finland, Czechs, Russia. There's 6. Now let's have a play-in tournament with the Swiss, the Slovaks, the Danes,
Beautiful.
The Germans. Have 2 of those teams make it. But the problem with that is, for the NHL, is if you're going to do that, you're going to have a bunch of non-NHL players in it.
Why does that matter? Like, why does it matter?
Because it's about the control thing. It's about, I mean,
more teams, more games, more money. That's about the money thing.
Right. And play and cooperate with the Europeans. Play the play-in tournament in Europe.
Yeah.
Right.
Play it in Copenhagen. Play it in Bratislava.
Sure.
Play it in Munich. Right?
Can we go broadcast those games?
Pardon me?
Can we go broadcast those games? I'll go to the play-in tournament.
But that's real. That's real international hockey, because it involves.
Yeah.
Wait for it. Nations.
Yeah.
All right. We've got 3 or 4 minutes here, Ray. I want your opinion, both opinions, internationally on this. Bob McKenzie just came out with his January draft ranking, right? And Gord, you pointed this out. And I was surprised by the number, to be fair, because we all have a healthy respect for the European players and some of the great young players that are developing. 16 of the top 20 in Bob's January draft are from Canada and the United States.
Yeah.
So I'll start with you, Gord. What's the biggest concern when you see those numbers from 2 countries?
So I think Canadians have a concern that the U.S. is pulling away from Canada. because they've won the last 2 World Juniors. But I would say be careful, picking and choosing from single tournament results. But in a larger scale, Canada and the U.S. have won the last 6. And you see where the young players are coming from. The concern that you're hearing from NHL scouts, from European federations, is that Canada and the U.S. together are separating from the rest of the pack. The financial advantages they have, the ability to spend on coaching, tournaments, everything else, is far outstripping Europe. And a lot of European development models are the club system. Ray, you were just at Liverpool, right?
Yep.
And you saw their facility. Now that's soccer.
Yes.
That's fueled by transfer fees and a whole different model. In Europe, if you look at, say, Frölunda in Gothenburg, they're responsible for the under 20, under 18, under 16, the women's program, all of it. If they struggle, all of that struggles. And those club teams struggled during COVID. They don't have near the money they used to have. And so the concern is A, that Canada and the US are pulling away, but B, where are the young European stars? Where are the Sundins? Where are the Forsbergs? Where are the Jagers? Where are the Solanis? There's a lot of great European players in the NHL, but most of them are approaching 30. The exception would be the Swiss and the Germans, who have poured a lot of money into development, have a lot of good young players. But we're not seeing the same superstar level caliber players coming out of Europe.
Is there anything in collaboration that countries can do? Or is that just an impossibility because our country knows better than yours? I mean, we could all see where that would be a problem.
Well, there is collaboration in some sense because it's good for everyone for more countries to be good.
Right.
Ray, you saw Liverpool. I mean, an entirely different model. So if Everton in the English Premier League develops a really good player, right?
Yeah.
Like Wayne Rooney, they then sell it not just to the other EPL clubs. He's on the market in Spain, Portugal, Italy, Germany, France. Like, the competition drives these transfer fees, and the transfer fees drive development. What the NHL teams pay to bring players over is a pittance. The federation gets some, the team gets some, but it's not much. And they're also drag fishing. There's about 60 Swedes playing in the American Hockey League this year.
Yeah.
The Swedes argue they should be playing in Sweden to make their league better, to improve everyone. But NHL teams, you don't pay much to sign them. Now, if an NHL team had to pay, say, $1 million to sign a player, they wouldn't park him in the American Hockey League. They'd wait till he was ready, and then they'd bring him. That's the problem. And now what you're seeing is the migration of top Europeans to North America, and it's only going to grow. This CHL NCAA deal is going to have all kinds of effects that we haven't foreseen. And one of them is going to be, we're going to see even more Europeans coming over at an even younger age to play junior hockey, USHL, and college.
No question. All right, Gordo. Well, again, always passionate, always informed when it comes to everything that is international hockey, and there's stuff percolating, right? And we'll learn more at the upcoming Four Nations face-off, because that's when the league and the Players Association will unveil the details as to how they plan to move forward with 2028.
And also, sorry to interrupt, Dregs, but also the IHF's going to vote next week on whether or not Russia's allowed back in next year. Probably won't be. Right. But that's going to be another looming, if the NHL is going to have a World Cup, is Russia going to be in it?
It's not looking that way. All right, buddy. Thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Awesome, Gord. Thanks for clearing all that up.
My pleasure.
Good of Gord Miller to join us here on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. And I mean, look, you'll get a taste again. You'll get your dose of international hockey, Ray, coming up with the Four Nations face-off. But there's probably a significant part of you that does miss that, right? I know you invested deeply into the World Juniors when you covered that and the men's worlds and everything that went into it. I mean, international hockey is a big deal when you're in it and you're invested in it, because you can see the benefits and you can see the people in Europe who just, they sleep, eat, and breathe hockey when it comes to the men's or the women's world championship. But you got to sometimes be there to see it.
For sure. I love doing those games. I love how people get behind their country. It's different than teams, of course. And like, I go back to, when I was a kid in the Canada Cup in 1976, and like that was it was a made up tournament, but it was the first time
Yeah.
we had seen a lot of these players. Like we had never seen them before. I had never heard of these Czech players before, and they got to the championship game against Canada. And what I remember was just the excitement of seeing like their jerseys and who played with who. And yeah, we're more familiar with the players now, but there's lots of players, to Gord's point, that we don't know that play in Europe. When the Czechs bring 6 or 7 guys we've never seen on a regular basis to the World Championships, and the team is really good, to me, it doesn't matter that they're NHL players or not. I think I think that's a hang up that doesn't need to be there. And I love it, and I think it'll be really fun in a few short weeks to watch this tournament. But it can. There's so many complications with international hockey. It's, Dregs, we've been over there and listen to like these guys. When I say these guys, I mean the whole of international hockey can't agree if today's Monday or Tuesday. It's crazy.
And it always revolves around the finances, who gets what, the politics of it. But one thing I would say from a Players Association and NHL perspective is there is a commitment now to that international calendar. Right. And whether you see the value in the Four Nations face-off or not, it does kickstart an important part of the growth of the sport. So that's good. All right, planes, trains, and automobiles for you this week, huh?
Well, yeah, but today's easy. I just got to walk across the street. I shouldn't be able to miss the rink here. And good one tonight, Dallas and Vegas. They had a hell of a game on Friday in Dallas, and so this will be a good one here. And then off to Seattle, I can see Macklin Celebrini live in the NHL for the first time. So looking forward to watching him. He's a hell of a player. And then Rangers Boston Saturday. So a good week. A good week.
Quick turnaround for
I think,
you. All the way west.
I think we're back. Are we doing this? Are we doing Thursday? Is that what we're doing this week?
I mean, I'm open. I always keep my schedules clear Tuesday and Thursday for the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. Tuesday. It's about you, my friend. You just tell us what's best and we'll make it work.
Thursday it is from wherever I am. That'll work.
All right. Safe travels.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks. Have a good week, Dregs.
And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs and make this podcast possible twice per week. Our title sponsor, Tim Hortons, and thank you to our good friends at Acon. Until next time, stay safe, everybody.